There's a lie that most men believe without ever saying it out loud. The lie is this: the man who talks most wins the room. And I get it. When you walk into a conversation, you feel unseen, feel dismissed, feeling like nobody's taking you seriously. The impulse is to talk your way into relevance, to explain yourself, make your case, fill the silence. But here's what I've learned the hard way: the more you talk, the less interesting you become. And the man who learns to be quiet, he becomes the most powerful person in that room. Not because he's performing power, but because he actually is it. My name's Kirk Taylor, and today on Steady Man, we're talking about why silence strengthens a man. And I'm going to be honest with you about what it cost me before I figured this out. Now, here's where we're going today. We're going to talk about what's actually driving a man to overtalk, because it's not what most people think. Then we're going to look at what silence actually does, practically and spiritually. And we're going to end with the one discipline that will change how people see you, but more importantly, how you see yourself. So let's get started. When a man talks too much, people usually assume he's arrogant. But in my experience, and I'm speaking with inside knowledge, it's almost never arrogance, it's insecurity. Insecurity causes us to talk. We talk because we were afraid the other person isn't going to respect us if we don't establish our position. We talk because we feel dismissed and we're trying to reclaim some ground. We talk because silence feels like losing. And I've done all of it. I've said too much in conversations where I should have just listened. I pushed back when I should have stepped back. And I've over explained my plans to people who weren't even asking, because somewhere underneath it, I needed their approval more than I was willing to admit it. And here's the truth that I had to face: I don't need other people to accept and approve of my plans. I need to follow Christ and do what is right. That's it. That's the whole job. But knowing that and living it, those are two different things. And I still fail at this regularly, but I am learning. Here's something I want you to think about. When you speak and react immediately, impulsively, you hand everyone else control over what happens next. You put your cards on the table. You give up your negotiating position. There's an old saying, he who speaks last wins. And I found that to be true more times than I can count. When someone comes at me with something I disagree with, I've learned slowly, imperfectly, to listen, not to agree, not to surrender my position, just to listen. Let them put their cards on the table. Let me see what I'm actually dealing with before I respond. And then one of two things happens. Either I state my position calmly if it actually matters, or I recognize that it doesn't matter and I disengage. I welcome them to follow their choice. What I've noticed is this: when a man doesn't fight you, doesn't argue you into submission, just lets you make your choice and steps back, people pay attention to that. And when the choice doesn't work out the way they thought it would, they tend to come back. And they're a lot more willing to hear what you have to say. Silence isn't passive. It's strategic and it's dignified. Now, I want to go a little deeper, because this isn't just a social strategy. There's something that happens inside a man when he learns to be quiet. First, it gives you time to think. And time to think is more valuable than most men realize. The more time you give yourself before reacting, the better your chances of taking decisive, intentional action. Or, this is the one we don't talk about enough, no action at all. Sometimes the most powerful move is to surrender the situation entirely. Let it go. Clear the path for something better. I found that in the stillness is where I actually hear something, not just my own thoughts getting quieter, but if I'm honest, something beyond them. Silence creates a natural opportunity to meditate, to seek wisdom, to ask what the right move actually is, rather than just being the reactive one. Reading the Bible cover to cover, doing a step study, working with my faith, these things have made me more secure, more focused on my path, not because I've arrived. I haven't. I fail daily, but I'm more grounded than I was. And that groundedness shows up in how I handle the moments when the pressure is on. Here's the practical piece, and I want you to sit with this. If you want to become a man who carries himself with quiet confidence, not performed confidence, not loud confidence, the work happens where nobody's watching. When I'm doing the right thing behind the scenes, the things nobody knows about, that shows up in how I carry myself. It shows up in how I prepared, how I do things. It shows up in what I know I can do and what I know I shouldn't. You cannot fake this. People can sense the difference between a man who talks confidently and a man who actually is confident. The second one has done the invisible work. He's not performing for the room. He's just being who he actually is. What you do in private becomes who you are in public. So here's where I want to land this. Silence isn't weakness. Silence isn't disengagement. Silence isn't losing. Silence is what a man has access to when he's done the work that nobody sees. The question isn't how do I seem more confident? The question is, am I getting the right stuff? Nobody's watching. Because if you are, it shows. You won't have to announce it. You won't have to defend it. You won't have to talk your way into the room. The room already will know. Get the stuff right that nobody sees, so the stuff they do see is a genuine reflection of who you think you are and who you actually are. That's a steady man. If this episode landed for you, I'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. It helps more men find this content. And if you know a man who needs to hear this, share it with him. That's what this channel is for. And I will see you in the next one.